Hey, welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Klopkin. And, I remember, well, it's almost 30 years ago how the OJ case, right then they had, cable was kind of coming, cable news was coming into its own, really coming into fruition. And, 30 years later, or almost 30 years later, we have the Murdoch case that's kind of started off a little slow, is now gripping the nation. I mean, CNN, Fox, others, right in prime time, along with Court TV. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see any of the case, but there's a lot of documentaries out there. Total craziness. It's this, old school family basically ran a whole South Carolina town and basically responsible for several murders. And the two murders that are at the forefront now is from the father killing both the son and wife. Have you seen any of this?
I have actively avoided seeing it. I do not understand the appeal, although I can explain the appeal using a term that you coined back when we were on terrestrial radio. This is the Kardashian effect. This is a well to do family on hard times, and oh, let's look into this because they make us look good.
Agreed with that, no question about it. And everyone likes the mighty, the mighty who have fallen. Yeah, I think that's
I,
true, and I think there's another situation brewing. That the news is so dire. We have a president that's essentially incompetent. I think it's almost escapism, even though it's a serious matter, obviously double murder, but a way to get away from the hard news. I think it's a Kardashian effect coupled with that. But it's just interesting how it's taken hold across the country.
yeah,
Um,
I think also another part of it is literally lack of work. When you have the anchors there, on CNN, Fox, I think MSNBC's covered it. Basically, they're aiming a camera at the stand. Their anchors don't have to do anything. They're filling up time with this.
100%. Yes, when you got 24/7, 360, you got to do something. And that's one thing I've kind of noticed of late. It took me a while. Obviously I'm a slow learner, but you watch the same shit over and over and over.
Yeah,
I think this kind of breaks things. I mean, how much can you report on Mayor Pete being completely incompetent? And on that subject, do you think it's the final epitaph in his once storied career?
yeah, I think even he's starting to realize that his political aspirations are over with.
You think
N-
over?
I think they're
I
done with.
do. I
There's
agree with that. By the way,
there's
over.
actually now talk about possibly impeaching him. Now,
Really?
yes, there was talk. Congressman from Georgia brought it up. Um, that it's not out of the realm of possibility that they will try to impeach him. I really wish Congress would stop talking about impeachments because it's become very clear that since the Trump impeachments, these people have no idea what impeachments are supposed to be. Impeachments are for crimes. And as much as we might like to, incompetence is not a crime.
If it
There's
was a
no,
crime, there'd be no one left in Congress.
right. They've got to stop with the impeachment talk because impeachment is a legal matter. And during the Trump impeachments, the Democrats completely blew that out of the water. They made it into a popularity contest. People outside of Congress were taking out ads saying, yes, he has to be impeached. No,
Well, they were
this,
talking about that when he got elected.
yes,
What's her name? Impeach 4 to 5. Oh my God,
right.
please. So,
Impeachment is a legal trial. It's not about taking out someone you don't like. It's not about
but
removing
that's what it's
somebody who
morphed
is.
to. Be
That's
careful
what
what you
it's
wish
be.
for,
Yeah,
Democrats.
that's
It's
what
that.
it's become thanks to Democrats' attacks on Trump. And there's a whole bunch of Republicans that are saying, well, you put us through this. Now it's your turn. And they need to step up and actually take the higher road.
I would agree with that. And in the political realm, we have the student loan forgiveness that's essentially in flames, correct? The half a trillion.
Yeah, it looks like the Supreme Court is going to rule that Biden did not have the ability to do this. Now, this really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody other than apparently Randy Weingartner, who threw a
Oh,
temper
God.
tantrum outside of the Supreme
Oh,
Court
she needs to go
during
away.
the
Please just
hearings.
go away.
Yeah,
Please go away. She's just an eyesore. She's an incompetent idiot, and she gives teachers across the country a bad name.
yeah.
Totally ridiculous.
The
Yeah, I
question
think
that
I think it is also interesting though that the dynamics behind the student loan. It was the squad that put pressure on the Biden White House, in particular Ron Klain, who didn't push back, and everyone
yes,
knew it was unconstitutional.
yeah, that's the question that the court has to answer. It's not about whether or not people deserve to get a break on their student
No,
loans.
it has to go
It's
through Congress.
right. The question is, does Biden have the ability to do this? Now, just take a look, forget the legal arguments. Joe Biden himself said he did not have the right to do this. Nancy Pelosi said he does
100%.
not have the right to do this.
Yep.
Everybody except the squad knew this had to be done by Congress. But the squad, and this is not the only issue, they've said this over and over again. The squad does not understand what an executive order is. So
But why did
when
they
the
cave then? That's the quintessential question, and one that deserves your articulation.
they
It's a real
caved,
question.
they caved because they thought they were going to lose big in the midterms, and giving away money to all of these young people got them to turn out and vote Democrat, because it's very hard to campaign against free money. That's what this was. This was money for votes.
But it's also, I think, yes, I 100% agree with that. But it's also indicative of a very weak administration that doesn't have the whole host to push back. And mano on mano with the squad, Biden's going to look like an idiot. That's also another
Well,
part
yeah,
of this.
but I mean, Biden is a weak president. He's weak on everything. He's weak on China. He's weak on student loans. He's weak against putting the left in their place. He is just a weak president. And the squad has taken advantage of this. And I honestly think that's one of the reasons why Pelosi started to step back, because she got tired of trying to keep the children in line. But
I think that's a valid point,
don't
yes.
these folks don't know what an executive order is. And in case any of our listeners are not aware of what it is, an executive order is a rule from the president about how agencies in the executive branch can carry out their mission. That's what an executive order is. You cannot pass a law by executive order. That has to go through Congress. You can't spend money through an executive order unless it's already been approved by
Okay,
Congress.
what a political effect does this reboot have?
I don't know that it's going to have any, because
I
the
think it's
squads,
another egg. It's another egg on the face. Is it the
well,
death knell? No, but I do know also people, not personally, but I through other people, I've heard people that have gotten a letter saying that your loan is in process of being. They filled out the paperwork. They're going to be pissed.
I'm sure they're going to be pissed, but the Democrats have the media on their side, and they're going to blame this on the Republicans. So it's not going to have any real effect on the Democrats, because, again, most people are not paying attention to the nitty gritty details all of this. What the general public knows is, hey, I was promised debt relief and now I'm not getting it.
And the
And it's
mean
because,
Republicans did it.
yes, and the mean Republicans did this by taking this all the way to the Supreme Court.
No
And
question
then
about it.
they're going to blame the Supreme Court, like Weingartner was trying to do, because again, people don't understand how government works anymore. And the Supreme Court is not a legislative body. All the Supreme Court can do is say, this is constitutional according to what's written down in the Constitution. This is not constitutional according to what's written down in the Constitution. That's it. They can't make law. They don't uphold laws other than saying, yes, according to the Constitution, Congress can do this. According to the Constitution, the president can do this. But Congress has been relying on the Supreme Court to make case law and to make laws so that they don't have to come out and take a stand either way on an issue.
Yeah, well, again, another misstep by the Biden administration. Again, I agree with you. Probably a neutral, some neutral kind of situation, not really going to impact his administration. And speaking of that, though, how would you, the water temperature, where do you see his administration? There was a time, summer, slightly post summer period, he was gaining momentum. Do you think that momentum is stalled, or what's your assessment?
Oh, that momentum is gone. According to the most recent polls, he's not at his low point anymore, but he still only has, I believe it was a 40% approval rating generally, and it was 67% of the country thinks we're going in the right direction, and
Wrong direction.
or in the wrong direction, yes. And I believe it was 62% of Democrats don't want him to run again.
There you go. I guess that's kind of a good indication. But speaking of an indication, I'm going to miss him. I'm assuming he's not going to run. I really do believe that. I don't think he's capable of it, but he's capable of gaffes like no one else. It was hysterical. He was talking to some get together. Obviously, last month was Black History Month, and he says, even though I'm a white boy, I know what's going on. And then I think today he was talking about time that he was in the hospital, and he said that his nurse that was taking care of him did things that weren't in the handbook, and even in the audience,
Yeah,
people were laughing.
yeah, it's
He's an
absolute.
embarrassment.
He
I mean,
is
he's a
an
funny
embarrassment.
embarrassment, but he is an embarrassment.
He is an embarrassment, and it's amazing how the left covers for him, because what they don't seem to realize is that for the past 50 years, he has been a sexist. He has been a racist.
A racist, yes,
I
thank
mean,
you.
remember when he during the campaign, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's like, are you kidding me?
There's
This is
no question about it. He's doing it for political expediency. In his heart of hearts, he's a not so intelligent, sexist and racist, and his tenure speaks for itself.
right. This is the man that went to the funeral of the KKK Grand Dragon. I mean, and he's supposed to be, oh, Lunch Pail Joe, man of the people. Really? If he was a man of the people, he'd have been in East Palestine.
Good point. Why wasn't he in East Palestine? Steen, sorry. Why
Because
wasn't
he
he?
because he doesn't give a damn what happens to the
Well,
American
I
people.
get it. He
It's
doesn't give a shit, but Reagan, he did care. Sure, the Challenger disaster. I mean, it's kind of a freebie. I'm sorry to be so callous, but it's a freebie political opportunity. Is he that far gone that his handlers didn't want him there because he'd say something stupid? Like at least the trains are running
it
on time, or who knows what he would say.
it could be that his handlers don't want to let him off the leash for fear of what he's going to say. It could be that he's so beholden to the left that he actually believes comments like what Joy Behar said on The View, that, oh, they deserve what they get because they voted for Trump. And by the way, the official report came out. The Washington Post fact checked it. Pete Buttigieg was yelling that this was because of deregulation under the Trump
Had zero to
administration.
do with that.
It had
Zero.
nothing to do with it. It was ball bearings failing in a wheel. It had nothing to do with the Trump administration. And, again, the Biden administration, the entire administration at this point, just lies constantly.
Well, again, we were talking about a tenure here. Not forget about the administration. Biden has been lying for what 40 plus years. I mean, he's it's not just like little white lies. He's incapable of telling the truth. Everything he was a professor at UPenn. He did this. He did that. I mean, it's really kind of scary. The guy's scared. You know, when he was back in the '80s, that he was quoting speech. He's so dumb. He thought no one would ever uncover it, even though it was pre-internet. Have, ripping off a speech from Winston Churchill and John Kennedy. I mean, God.
Yeah, what's really scary though is that they keep repeating the same lies and the general public starts to believe them. Uh, just over the past few days, Biden, over the past 2 years, has been saying there are 9,000 oil leases that aren't being used, and the oil companies should be using them. Well, the Department of the Interior finally came out and said, well, that's actually a lie. The Washington Post fact checked it, went, nope, that's a lie. But he keeps repeating it. Over the last couple of days, he was in Virginia, and he started saying, well, your health care is at risk because the Republicans want to take away Medicare and Medicaid. And again, the Washington Post fact checked him and found it's a lie. And the Republicans have come out and said Medicare and Medicaid are not on the table. And he keeps relying on one campaign brochure that Rick Scott from Florida put out that not a single Republican agreed with.
Is it Tom or Rick Scott?
Rick Scott.
But by the way,
No,
on the Scott issue,
Tim,
though, no, not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. Sorry, an idiot.
Yeah, no. Let's be clear. Rick Scott is the idiot that got us in this with those campaign promises.
That's what
from
I'm saying.
Florida.
He's an idiot.
Yes, Tim Scott is from Georgia in the
No, he's
Senate,
great. He's got a future.
and he is actually brilliant. He's
brilliant. I get it. Completely different. But our Florida Scott, a complete buffoon. This is an idiot. I hardly ever agree with Senate leadership on the Republican side. But just go away. You're an idiot. You're putting fuel. You're giving them fuel for the fire. He completely disqualifies him as any kind of presidential candidate. He's an idiot.
The reason I make that differentiation and specifying Rick Scott versus Tim Scott is because Tim Scott has come out recently looking like he's going to throw his hat in for president, and the Democrats have been attacking him using things that Rick Scott said because the Democrats can't tell the two of them apart.
There you go.
Even though the only thing they've got in common, including race, by the way, because Tim Scott is black, the only thing they've got in common is the last name.
But I thought the Democratic Party was the party of science and fact. Maybe not. There you go.
Yeah,
men shifting genders, all that. I think we don't really have to go into that thing. On the political note, consumer sentiment fell a little bit, not drastically, even though it was revised down the previous month. And I still get back to Nixon and Watergate. You got Biden with 39, maybe 40% approval. The only thing I'm have to say that's keeping him afloat is the economy. Is it inflation's? I got it. That's a real problem. But overall, especially with jobs, when people start losing their jobs, then the shit hits the fan. That has not happened yet, and I just wonder if the shoe ever drops in terms of inflation plus an economic downturn. I think he's screwed.
Well, the predictions now are that, yes, you're going to start seeing an economic downturn. We've already started seeing GDP falling again. We've seen consumer sentiment falling again. The Fed has said they are going to keep raising interest rates, which is going to slow the economy further. But now, while people don't think it's going to be as serious as it once was, it does look like the economy is going to take its downturn right in the middle of the presidential campaign.
Which, by the way, self-servingly, if you were Biden, not that he would even know what the economy is, but you'd want to get it over with. But it's going to be right at the sweet spot for his potential reelection.
Yes, and the incumbent always takes the blame for the
No question,
economy. Whether, and let's be clear, there's a lot that goes on in the economy that the president has nothing to do with, that the government
100%.
has nothing to do with. But the president always gets the credit or takes the blame depending on what happens. The fact of the matter is, especially with jobs, the president and Congress can't do anything to create jobs. They've got two options. They can hinder the economy, which very often both sides do, or they can get out of the way of business and let the economy move forward.
Which
They
happens
tend not
very rarely.
Yeah, they tend not to want to do that. They want to stick their hands in it and screw things up.
But I do think there are presidents that instill confidence. Reagan, even Clinton, to be fair, and there's those that do the opposite. Ford and Biden. I think Biden, yeah, again,
Harder.
the pres and Carter, absolutely. The point is,
Yeah.
I think he is a detriment to the economy because in every field or every avenue that he's involved in, people always have the Biden factor, which is oh shit.
Yes, people are constantly worried about what he's going to do to screw things up.
Exactly.
Remember, it was Barack Obama that told Politico magazine never underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. And that's what people are worried about.
And it's really
And by
funny,
the
though. It
way,
is funny. I have to interject one thing real quick. It is funny when I heard that, when talking about the nurse. I mean, I don't think anyone even takes him serious anymore. Not that they did before, but they were just laughing.
yeah, I think they know everything that comes out of his mouth is made up at this point. Nobody takes what he says seriously. They wait for Corinne Jean Pierre to come out and backtrack what he said.
Another Mensa candidate.
You know,
Yeah, I
and
think
just on a quick tangent, we just mentioned Jimmy Carter, and I'm sure all of our listeners know that Jimmy Carter has now opted for hospice care. He's
hmm
at the end of his life. This was when he was not a great president, but he had a tremendous second act in American life. He was a fantastic person. And personally, I am just glad he lived long enough to see the polls saying that he was not the worst president.
there's no question in my mind that he was definitely not the worst president. Um, yes, he was not a great president. Absolutely 100% agree with you. Sometimes, events beyond your control do play a role. The Arab oil embargo, he was against letting the Shah into this country. It was Rockefeller and Kissinger that convinced him otherwise. I'm not letting him off the hook, but at least I think he was a patriotic American. He was extremely intelligent, and those are two things that Biden is not.
Absolutely. Even when you didn't agree with Carter, you knew he was trying to do the best he could.
Yep.
He was trying to do what was good for America. When Biden actually does certain things, you wonder whose best interest he's
A
trying to act
hundred
in.
percent, no question about it. Yes, and Biden was a political hack, and he's always been a political hack. Carter, yes, not one of the greatest presidents, agreed 100%, but he was not a political hack to his detriment, by the way. Speaking of detriment, Fox News could be in a little bit of the shitter. The the lawsuit and the further information gathering, emails, Rupert Murdoch, basically them in writing saying they didn't believe that the election was stolen, but we need to say this shit anyway because we don't want to lose viewers. Not good. Talk about fake news.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt them.
Not good.
I mean, this is not something that's unique to Fox. We've heard
But don't
from
put it in writing.
well, yeah, yeah, you never put something
Hello,
like that
genius.
in writing. But by the same token, we've actually heard from former CNN staffers how they knew the Steele dossier was fake, but they had to go on about it over and over again because that's what their audience wanted. Although I don't think they were right about that, given how much of their audience they lost. We know MSNBC goes out saying ridiculous things because that's what their audience want. This is the problem with news organizations being run by entertainment companies. They're
That's it in a nutshell, Lopkin. That's it. It used to be the news was somewhat sacred. Was maybe didn't even make a profit. CBS. And I'm talking the old days.
yes,
Now, yes, you're right. You will listen to
that
MSNBC unless you're on acid to believe that you have either you're not that bright or you need to stop drinking.
no, back during the days of Walter Cronkite, the news divisions of networks, they didn't even care if it turned a profit. The rest of the company was there to turn a profit. The news was there to be a public service. That's not true anymore. It has to be a profit center for all of these companies, and that is manipulating what they cover.
And it's
It's what
transitioned from news. Now it is essentially entertainment on both
it's
sides. Let's cut
right.
the
It's
shit.
it's why you have shows by Tucker Carlson, by Rachel Maddow, why you have nonstop coverage of Alex Murdaugh. This is not news. This is ratings.
No question about it. There's no doubt. I think it will have an impact. Is it going to be fatal? No, but it's certainly a couple more. It's going to have some battle damage to Fox, and might actually they have problems attracting top tiered advertisements or advertisers, even though they have a larger audience. This is not going to help them in their efforts. Um, well, on the let's just say the Republican or conservative side of things, you have Matt Schlapp. He's the head of CPAC, the conservative organization. He's now embroiled in a sex sexual misconduct with a male staffer, even though he's got a younger, pretty hot looking wife. But anyway, that aside, so they have fewer marquee Republican figures showing up at the event. I believe that's happening either now or in the not too distant future. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Republicans are starting to back.
DeSantis is getting later. He's not going.
Yeah,
Trump will go probably.
Trump will definitely go. Republicans in general are backing away from CPAP, and that's a good thing because Republicans need to separate themselves. CPAP is very clearly and very definitively the pro Trump wing of the party. These are the folks that all the media are polling when you see the numbers. Oh, 33% of Republicans are going to vote for Trump. No, 33% of CPAP attendees will vote for Trump. The rest of the party is backing away. CPAP needs to learn that they do not control the party.
No, this is a good thing for the Republic. To your point, dovetailing on that, it's a good thing for conservatism and the Republican Party to have their power minimized.
Yeah, it really is. They, have been gaining power since the Tea Party movement, and it's time that the Republicans realize if they let the right wing wacko part of the party control things, they're no better than the Democrats letting the squad control things.
100% agreed.
You
Yes.
both parties really need to come back to the idea that they have to represent the entire country, not the wacko wing of their party, not even their party as a whole. They need to represent the American people. And neither party has been doing this.
And I think the jury's still out if they're capable of that.
That's true.
Speaking of gaining or losing power, Iran certainly gaining power, especially after the Barack Obama administration. And there's reports that they're pretty much there with nuclear material. They just need to take the next step, and that is the technology to actually build a working bomb. However, with all the players in the world, I don't think that's going to be too difficult, a la North Korea. Question: Is numbnuts in the White House capable of doing anything? And number two, what do you think Israel's response will be or should be?
Well, Numbnuts is definitely not capable of doing anything. That's why he spent so long trying to get us back in the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, yeah. So talk
Which,
about we talk about MSNBC and drinking too heavily. What are you smoking to get back into the worst agreement in the history of the universe? Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry,
no,
but it's true.
when
Yeah.
And the thing is, when Trump pulled out of that deal, the left went nuts. Oh my God, how that Iran's going to get nuclear weapons. Iran admitted that they had been working on their nuclear program during the deal. So they weren't obeying the terms of the deal anyway. That's why Trump wanted out of it. So, yes, they are getting nuclear materials and they're not going to have any problems with the delivery system because we already know from our intelligence people they've been in talks with Russia to buy weapons.
So what do you think Israel's response? Numbnuts is going to do nothing. And by the way, we have a not to full measure, but in large measure, have Barack Obama and all the of his Jewish constituency that loved him and was fawning over him. He basically was the contributor to Iran's ascendancy from the ashes. By the way,
Yes, because he decided, oh, let's bring Iran into the family of nations.
when are people going to stop
Right.
with that nonsense?
It's
It's
the same
ridiculous.
thing they wanted to do with China. It hasn't worked with China. It didn't work with Iran. They
North
don't want
Korea.
Right. They don't want to be part of the family of nations. They want to dominate. And you cannot negotiate with that. As for what Israel's going to do, now I don't have any idea of the specifics of what Israel is going to do, but I guarantee you at this moment, there are Mossad agents on the ground in Iran already taking action.
I would think so because you got to learn from the Holocaust. It's you got your back up against the wall. No numbnuts isn't going to help you. You got to do something proactively. You have no choice. It's your survival.
Exactly. They can't wait for somebody else to come to their rescue. And to be fair, when it comes to Iran, Israel and the Mossad are primarily responsible for Iran not already having
A
nuclear
hundred
weapons.
percent agreed.
They're
Yes,
the
a hundred
ones that
percent.
have kept them in line. So I believe they're going to do it again, and I think it's a very sad statement that America needs Israel to bail us out.
There you go. That's the quintessential point. That's the takeaway moment. Yeah, you got, you know, Trump, it would never have happened. Let's just call a spade a spade. But numbnuts is too worried about nurses going beyond their duties while he was a patient, or God knows what else he's thinking about. He would probably uh, punish, but basically go again. If Israel took action, he'd probably say that he was not in favor of it. What do you think?
He probably would say he's not in favor of it. That's why Israel and the Mossad will never tell the Biden administration what they're doing.
That would be the dumbest thing ever.
You
Well,
know?
speaking of the dumbest thing ever, maybe not ever, we talked about San Francisco. We talk about the California with their exploding debt, even though they got the reprieve through COVID, which was an artificial look at where they were financially. Now you have, in spite of this, San Francisco still proceeding with $5 million per person reparations plan to take back the sins, at least financially, of the slavery era.
Yeah,
Again, not the brightest thing I've ever heard.
I don't know where they think they're going to get the money from.
It's
They
never going to
already
happen.
they already have a deficit. They have people leaving in droves. They have businesses leaving in droves. The tax base is shrinking. They can't even keep their power grid up. I don't know what they're thinking. This is one of those things. It's like, oh yes, let's throw money at the problem. Maybe they think that Newsom is going to run for president, win, and bail the state out.
Who knows what they're thinking, but it really is kind of sad. And what Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm not one of her
Again,
biggest fans.
another
No,
not
I'm not a
exactly a
complete nut
Minster
job.
candidate.
But
Yeah, it's
even a broken clock is right twice a day. And I'm not saying she was right in saying, but are we getting to a point where she said America should get a divorce, meaning red state, blue state? Is there really any commonality between states like Texas and Utah and California and New York? I say not, and increasingly
well,
so.
there really isn't that much in common, but there never has been. And that's what Democrats don't really seem to grasp. This is why the founding fathers created the Electoral College, because they knew New York was never back then it was New York was never going to vote for what was best for Virginia or Georgia. Now we've got California, Illinois, New York. They're never going to vote for what's best for Oklahoma, for Alabama, for Arkansas. I've heard this a lot lately that it's less a, it's less about racial prejudice. It's less about class prejudice. It is now about coastal prejudice. And the coasts just have no idea what goes on in the middle of the country and they don't care. They don't
Flyover
want it.
country.
Yes, they don't want to know what's going on in East Palestine. They don't care what happens to these people. It's the coastal elite and they just want what's best for them. And
Okay, but this
again,
was not always the case. You had in California in my lifetime, you had Ronald Reagan, governor of California. You had with Davis in the 1990s. You had Republican governors of New York. No, the craziness has happened over the last, I'm going to say, 25,
well,
30 years of political correctness gone amok. But no,
it's
California used to be a yes. It was always known for its idiosyncrasies, but that was kind of a good thing. Led to innovation, but it was never the insane asylum it is today.
no, but it's more than just political correctness. This was, and we referred to this last week, the book Rules for Radicals. Over the last 30 years, they the radical left took over the educational system in these states, in California, in New York, to the point where UC Berkeley, which used to be the bastion of free speech, now has zones that they refer to as non-Jew zones. UC Berkeley also
Oh,
decided
let
that
me just
because
interject something about that. There's also overall, beyond just the educational system, rampant, again, bastions of liberalism. Pay attention, our Jewish friends out there. Anti Semitism is exploding, pervasive in
yes,
California.
yes,
Jews
and
fear for their friggin' lives.
and
Again, the bastion of liberalism. There you go.
on top of that, they stopped educating people. UC Berkeley, because students coming from the California state education system, and I'm talking about K through 12, were unable to meet their requirements, UC Berkeley had remedial courses in English and math. Well, UC Berkeley got to the point where they decided so many of the California educational students needed this remedial class rather than making more remedial classes and bringing the kids up to speed, they dropped the requirements.
that's not only true in California, that's true even in some of the Ivy League schools,
Yes.
which begs the question. You talk about America's decline, which I think, I'm sorry to say, is well on its way. It used to be, yeah, okay, K through 12, there were fissions in that years ago, but it was always our higher education system, our universities, there were beacons to the world, the innovative hubs of everything. I wouldn't bet the ranch on that nowadays. Sorry,
I
sorry,
know
sorry.
and now more and more people are realizing that higher
It's a
education is
bullshit.
mostly useless.
It's a
But
business. How
this
does
is
that sound?
this is why the Democrats keep pushing. Oh, we need to make community colleges free so more people can go to college. We need to get more people into college. No, we need to fix K through 12 so that whether or not somebody goes to college is irrelevant for the rest of their lives. They can get a great career without going to college. They don't need the higher degrees. And you're seeing tech companies are saying we don't care if you have a college degree. Financial companies, they're no longer hiring MBAs because there's no value to an MBA anymore.
Well, actually, you summarized it, and it's about a year ago. I've actually told people, if you will, just in conversation, that, and I really, not patronizing you in any way. I think it's really the model of the future, in my humble opinion. And that is, yeah, you got the 4 year friggin' degree, great. You learned about, I don't know, like zebras and whatever. Okay, I would be more impressed as an employer that some young person, man, woman, black, white, whoever, did the, I'll call it, this is my term, the buffet of education. All right, I got a certificate in communication. I'm not talking nonsense. I'm talking about reading, reading or writing. I'm sorry, essay construction. I got a certificate in STEM technology. Basically, maybe an associate's degree in kind of some kind of STEM skill. I'm looking at that and going, this person's ready to work. They're not worried about
Yes,
if Columbus was a racist. Like, who gives a shit?
when I look at a potential hire, whether it's a freelancer, an employee, a contractor, whatever it is, I don't give a damn what degree they have. I want to see they're hungry. I want to see that they want to learn. I want to see that they are going to go out and do the job as though their life depended on it. I don't care what degree they have. And you mentioned, communications. This is actually something that has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. It drives me nuts when people cannot speak English. Now, I'm not talking about somebody that grew up in another country and learned English as a second language. I'm talking about people that English is the only language they speak and they still don't know how to speak it or
Yeah,
write it.
and how about critical thinking skills? That's gone out the window too. Please. Uh, yeah, I think, and I think, yes, you're an intelligent person, you're a successful business person, but I think it's not just your opinion. Yeah, that's great, but I believe in my heart of hearts that it's going to become more of the norm moving forward because the business of business is making money, and it's just not just because they want to piss on 4 year schools. It's because they need to survive. And I believe the buffet of education, yours truly deemed, I think it's going to be much more impactful. And I think employers are going to look more and more for that. And I
They're
think
all
schools that are, let's say, your average, especially private schools, will fall by the wayside because they serve no useful purpose.
Yeah, businesses are already looking for that. They want to see people who will take control of their own education. And I've heard it more and more often, but it's an old quote by Mark Twain. I never let my schooling interfere with my education. That's what we're seeing now. We're seeing people using online resources to learn new subjects. and foregoing the traditional 4-year
The
college.
paradigm has been broken.
Yes,
It's for a previous generation. When you had the luxury, when you're sitting on top of the world without a global society, a global economy, you can learn about how King George was a racist and how dinosaurs migrated. But in terms of actual useful education, it's basically obsolete. Now, I
it
don't
is.
want you
And
to. Go ahead.
ironically, though, what seems to have been the tipping point and what's really pushed people into realizing this is the Joe Biden student loan debacle. Because now you've got junior high school and high school students who are hearing this and they're going, wait a minute, you took out all this money to go to a 4-year school and you're not making enough to pay it back. Why would I want to do that?
100%. In fact, there are, I'll use senior citizens, people, believe it or not, in their late 50s, early, that still haven't paid them off. No, that's
Oh,
a
yeah.
fact.
Yes.
I mean, that's like, what,
I know
40 years?
people. Yeah.
So I don't want you to cry about this, Dr. Lopkin. Please brace yourself. It just came through the news wire that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were told to vacate their UK homes and their college residence. I know. I don't want to. You're not only a colleague but a friend. I don't want to ruin your whole day. Couldn't happen to a better
couldn't
bunch of idiots.
couldn't happen to nicer people. They have
God,
ostracized their family. They have ostracized their friends. They're not even getting invited to
no,
A-list Hollywood
Hollywood. No.
parties anymore, which of course Meghan Markle has been whining about incessantly. All I can say is I've got the world's smallest violin and it's playing just for them.
I will concur with that and say bon voyage. Bon voyage, Dr. Lopkin. Another great show, and maybe you
Oh,
can
wait a
update
minute.
our list. Go
Before
ahead.
we sign off, there's another bon voyage we have to talk about.
Go ahead, sir.
The voters of Chicago have spoken. The
God,
votes are
I am
in,
so yeah. I
and
had that.
she
I missed that. Yes, the
and she
worst.
is
Is it
out
the
of
worst?
here.
Is it the worst mayor ever? De
She may
Blasio, her
Lori
neck and neck.
Light
I think it's her.
Lori Lightfoot may very well have been the worst mayor ever, and the Democrats of Chicago have stood up and said enough is enough. She didn't even get enough votes to participate in next month's runoff, never mind the general election.
And you
And
know
it
something?
and it's
Don't
because
go ahead.
the two candidates that won, Johnson and Vallis, I believe their names are, they put issues first. One ran on fixing education, the other ran on fixing crime, and Lightfoot stuck to her guns and divided the city and basically put uh, her political ideology and race ahead of everything else. And the voters said enough is enough.
I hope that's a canary in the coal mine. She was completely incompetent. She was a racist. I'm sorry, she was a racist,
She was.
and she let's just I don't know. We're talking about 4 year schools. I no idea what kind of institution would ever graduate her, but it obviously I would assume happened somewhere along the line. But I hope that's a canary in the coal mine because even a month ago, people were saying, yeah, she's incompetent, she's a moron, she's a racist, all the above, but she's still going to win in Chicago. And I was very much surprised, happily surprised at her demise. Couldn't happen to a dumber and more incompetent person, and
No, it
and
was.
a person that has true hatred in their hearts. Someone actually said, "I'm not speaking to white reporters." Really?
Yes, this is what she said. This is how we know she's a racist because she stated it flat out. But Lori Lightfoot now is the ultimate example that crime does not pay. She let crime go wild in Chicago, and now she's going to have to pay the price.
My prediction: she will go the way of Hillary, meaning she won't go out gracefully, and she will use either the sex or race card, you can guarantee that. It will not be about her brilliant tenure at the helm.
Oh, absolutely. She will blame it on being black. She will blame it on being a lesbian because people are intolerant. And she will completely gloss over the fact that Chicago has fallen apart, that crime is out of control, that murders are out of control, that businesses are fleeing the city.
And by the way, I have a special place in my heart for Chicago. When I was in the business world, I was always, and I had to go on some international conferences in Chicago. I always took pride as an American for people coming from Germany, you name it, all over the world. I thought Chicago, as the name used to say, the city that works. It was a beautiful, of course, it always had crime, but it was an American showcase. I truly believe that.
Talk to anybody who had been in Chicago prior to Lightfoot, prior to COVID, prior to all of this. They will all tell you that Chicago is one of America's most beautiful cities,
No doubt.
and Lightfoot destroyed it.
Well, you got to give her credit. That's quite a feat. I mean, I don't know if I'm
Yeah, I
capable
mean
of that
she's
either.
right up there with Gavin Newsom with
And
that.
De
And
Blasio too.
yeah, Bill de Blasio.
Well, now I would have slapped myself if you didn't chime in with that. I'm glad you did, and we'll be back next week, and we're kind of on a roll, aren't we, Doctor Lopkin?
We are. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and any platform that respects freedom of speech.
You think we can have Lori Lightfoot on next week's show?
Well, it's not like she's got anything else to do.
There you go. All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.